Hey friends, welcome to Restored Kitchen. Today we are making Hawaiian beef and tomato, aka pepper steak as my husband calls it. My husband is half Hawaiian, and so this meal is a staple in my house. And as you'll see, some of the ingredients have that Hawaiian flair, which gives it a completely different taste. Let's get into this. Okay, so for this, we're going to need some type of roast or beef. I have a London broil here. You can also use a flank steak. I'm going to cut this in half and use some of it for another recipe because this is pretty thick. 1 onion, 3 tomatoes. I'm using a bell pepper, a garlic clove. This is Shoyu Hawaiian soy sauce. I'm going to use some sugar, just maybe a few tablespoons. We're going to use some garlic powder, ground ginger, and cornstarch. So let's go ahead and get all this chopped and prepped. All right, to my cutting board, I'm just laying down a sheet of wax paper. This is just going to be easy cleanup for me. And we are going to start with this meat. Now, I'm just going to wipe it down with a paper towel just to dry it off just a little bit. We will be adding cornstarch, and so I want it to stick and bind. Like I said, I am going to make 2 meals from this London broil, so I am going to cut it in half. I think I might make a pot roast with this. I try to stretch my meat as much as I can. And so I'm just going to show you a little bit how I cut this because it is so thick as you've seen. I cut it in half and I still have pretty good sized chunks. But I'm just cutting this kind of long ways into thin strips, kind of like you would a pepper steak. So the background story on beef and tomato, aka pepper steak, I looked up authentic Hawaiian meals and I found beef and tomato. And my husband, when I made it, he didn't know what I was talking about. He said he knew it as pepper steak. It is Hawaiian beef and tomato. So now we're going to place 1 tablespoon of cornstarch on our beef. This is going to give a nice thick coating onto our meat. Do not worry about seasoning your meat right now because it's going to be heavily seasoned pretty soon. And if we have not met, my name is Jennifer. You're watching Restored Kitchen. Go ahead and hit that like button and be sure you subscribe. Let's go ahead and set this beef aside and get started with our veggies. Okay, so I'm cutting this bell pepper. Bear with me here because my tripod broke and it's kind of hard to cut. But I wanted to actually show you me cutting this because I cut it into strips and then I'm cutting it into half. This is going to kind of bulk up our meal a little bit, make it a little bit more hearty, and stretch the meal a little bit more. So now we want to cut up our onion, and I take those scraps and I use those for a broth. I will put them in the freezer and with celery, carrots, whatever scraps I have, and I make a vegetable broth, a chicken broth, bone broth, stock. It just depends. But anyway, so I am just chopping this, just quick dice. This is not anything special. And I'm going to put this into a bowl and set them aside along with the bell peppers. Now that we have those set to the side, we're going to mince about 4 or 5 cloves of garlic. Now, one of the easiest ways to chop garlic is to take it with a knife and smash it. You can do this with your hand. You could do this with a plate or whatever you got, but it's easy. There's all kinds of ways to get that peeling casing off of garlic. I've seen people put it in jars and shake it and it comes off. Stick forks in it and it comes off. Whatever way you can get it off, you get it off. We just need to mince this garlic. So I am just setting this aside. And I'm going to go ahead and get started on these tomatoes. I'm going to show you a very simple way to cut this. Let me just get these off the vine, and I am just rinsing these tomatoes. Be sure you wash your produce really well, just to get all the wax coating, and there's oils that they put on them. So now that I've got these washed off really well, we're just going to give them a quick chop. So I like to take it, slice it in half, and then the inside core I just do in a little tiny triangle. I cut one side, cut the other side, and pop that out. Now this just depends on what I'm making. because sometimes I leave it in if I'm making salsa or something else. But I just cut this tomato in half and then cut it in quarters and then cut that in half. This will give me 8 pieces. Again, here we go. I'm going to just cut half of it, and then I take that inside core out. Cut it in half, then I cut it, it's kind of like apple slices, and then I cut this in half. This is going to give me a little bit more bang for my buck, because when we're cooking the tomatoes, we're not really cooking them down. Now this can be to your taste, but the recipe doesn't call to cook them down too much. You're just going to cook them enough to get into the sauce. But I like a little bit more of a tomato. If you don't, you can add less. And here I'm just coring it the same way, except for just stabbing the knife through, just a different way. It's a lot easier for me to see what I'm doing. But there's all kinds of ways that you can cut it. If you're using Roma tomatoes, I would say to cut it in half, long ways, and then cut that in half and use those. That's why I like using beefsteak or some type of vine, some type of really meaty tomato. Okay, getting started, we're going to put about 1 tablespoon of oil and saute the garlic. Now I'm going to add ground ginger. If you have fresh ginger, that would actually be best. I did not have it on hand, but you just want to kind of toast your spice just a little bit, not too long. We don't want it to burn. Go ahead and add your onions in as well. And we just want to saute the onions until they're almost translucent. These are going to cook more in the sauce that we're going to prepare pretty soon. So now that our onions look pretty good, you want them to look almost like this. We're going to add our bell peppers. We're going to give it a quick stir, let it cook for 5 minutes, and then we're going to remove these from the pan and go ahead and add another tablespoon of oil to begin to cook our meat. So our meat that has been marinating, we're going to place that into the hot pan, and we want these to cook until halfway. So we're not going to cook these fully because these are going to cook in the sauce. So it's okay that they will be a little pink. We just need these to sear up, mainly cook through, but not all the way, because we will be removing these in about 5 minutes. We're going to go ahead and get started on our sauce. So the full authentic recipe is going to be in the description box. I did not have all of the ingredients, so I just used what I did have on hand, and we'll start with 1/4 cup of shoyu. Shoyu is a Hawaiian soy sauce. I buy it off of Amazon by the gallon. I will leave a link in the description box. So next we're going to add 1 tablespoon of sugar. You can use brown sugar if that's what you have on hand. This does not matter. And we're also going to add 1 tablespoon of rice vinegar. So there are 3 ingredients that I omitted from this because I just did not have them. That is oyster sauce, Mirin, and sesame oil. I will have the full ingredients of the sauce as well as the recipe in the description box. But now that I have all of the ingredients I'm going to use, we're going to mix this and set this aside. Now the key to cooking is to almost multitask, and now's the perfect time to go ahead and make your white rice, which we're going to have with this beef and tomato. It will probably take about 10 minutes to cook this, so it's perfect to go ahead and get it started. Be sure you check out my video on how to make the perfect white rice. Back to our beef. It is almost cooked, still pink. We're going to remove it from the pot, add our peppers and onions, let them cook for just a moment. And you see how it's got a nice thick coating? That comes from the beef and that cornstarch. Just enough to coat these. Now we're going to add our tomatoes, and the recipe is going to fly by now because we don't want to cook these down. Hold on, let me separate this because I guess I didn't cut it very well, but that's okay. So like I said, the recipe is going to go pretty quickly now. So we only want to cook this for a minute. We want our tomatoes to look like this. From here, we're going to add our beef back into our pot. Give this a quick stir. And we're only going to cook this for about maybe 2 to 3 minutes longer, just to allow all the flavors just to mix and to cook that beef a little bit more thoroughly. We're going to make a little well here in the middle. And I like doing this because then I can kind of incorporate it evenly. And we're going to add our shoyu sauce to this. Now I'm just going to mix this up, and within a minute you are going to see it thicken up. I'm going to leave the video just running so you can see how this sauce just thickens up. And there you go. You see it's got a nice almost gravy consistency. Now if you want it thicker, add about a teaspoon more of cornstarch. When you add cornstarch, always add it in a separate container, in a separate bowl, and add a little bit of water. Never ever add cornstarch directly to sauces because it will kind of clump together and you don't want that in your meal. You can sift it out if you really need to add some more. We are done. Hawaiian beef and tomato, aka pepper steak. And just look at these tomatoes. They bring this beautiful pop of color. Definitely have to try this. This is a staple in my house. Easy recipe. Be sure that if you try this, that you leave a comment. Let me know what you really think. And don't forget to look for my how to make the perfect white rice video. I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you guys later.